The vaccination to help prevent cervical cancer. It's been on offer here since 2008 and more than 200,000 New Zealand girls have had it. The scientists say it's safe. But in tonight's 3D Investigates, Paula Penfold hears from girls and their families who have serious doubts. They want to know whether Gardasil is to blame for what's happened to them. In two cases, that was sudden, unexplained death, and others, crippling illness. Are these families right to be concerned, or is science on the vaccine side?
Four New Zealand girls, unconnected except for the fact that they're sick.
I couldn't move. I was in so much pain if I moved.
What kind of pain? What did it actually feel like for you?
Like somebody was stabbing me.
I was in extreme pain and tingliness.
What kind of pain is that?
Achy and sharp.
I started developing constant nausea and headaches.
And then it started throbbing and it started tingling.
My legs just didn't feel connected to my hips some days.
And then the body pain started.
A stark contrast to the way they once were, fit, healthy, active in sport, skiing, water skiing, netball, dancing and cheerleading. But all of that changed. What do you think is the cause of all of this?
Gardasil.
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 Why?
Because I was a healthy child before this.
Every time I had a shot, it got worse.
Food allergies, and then all the other symptoms just followed.
First time I had a virus and I couldn't move my limbs.
And as soon as I had this, everything just came crashing down.
Pains in my chest so bad that I was in the fetal position.
Everything would start to hurt, like my knees, my back.
I had a swollen brain, which still hasn't really gone away.
It's a big list of symptoms.
Yeah.
Could it be a coincidence?
I don't think so.
But it's tough to make that conclusion, isn't
Yeah.
it? Because there's no scientific
Yeah.
evidence.
I think it's really hard because no one can prove it, but I don't think it is a coincidence that there's all these girls with all the same symptoms as me, not just in New Zealand but all around the world. So I think it might have been the trigger to what I have.
Hi, I'm Hine Tapura. I'm going to talk to you about being immunised against HPV.
Gardasil was first approved by the FDA in 2006 and has been available in New Zealand for 7 years, mostly given through schools to girls in Year 8, costing around $8.7 million a year. And there's no argument that what Gardasil aims to counter is a serious disease. Human papillomavirus may eventually lead to cervical cancer, which kills about 50 New Zealand women a year. And of the 200,000 or so girls and young women who've had Gardasil here so far, for the vast majority there have been no problems. But there have been 478 cases of adverse reactions considered to be related to Gardasil. The doctors for these girls can't tell them the cause of their illnesses. What is clear is that their lives have been drastically changed. What's it been like for you, Olivia, going from being a really fit, active, healthy girl to being in a wheelchair with all this pain?
Yeah, it's really, really hard. At the start, I just couldn't come to terms with it. I was just thinking, this is so unfair, like, why is this happening?
How's your mobility? How are you getting around?
I'm in a wheelchair.
Do you feel like you're getting any better yet?
I think people can see me get better, but inside I don't really feel like I'm getting better.
How are you, going to the bathroom, having a shower, that kind of thing?
I can't touch any water at the moment.
Can't touch water? Why not?
Because it hurts my skin too much.
Even a shower hurts your skin. When you've been at your lowest points, what's been going through your head?
That this is going to happen all the time and I'm never going to get better. And like I'm going to have this when I'm older.
What does it feel like being you, living that life?
That's really boring. I hate it. I miss going to school. I still talk to my friends, but I don't see them as often.
How are you coping mentally?
I'm alright.
Are you? good girl. But not really.
No.
Their symptoms and concerns are not just being raised here, they're being echoed internationally, most recently in this Danish documentary.
Jeg får enormt mange smerter. Der er også enormt stor chance for, at jeg besvimer.
Så har jeg ledesmerter engang imellem i min albue og knæ.
The medical profession are protecting the pharmaceutical companies.
And just last month in the Irish Parliament, this from an opposition senator.
What I have got here are testimonials from young girls between 12 and 17 across Ireland who have been confined to their beds, all because of this vaccination. This is an appalling vista. I couldn't believe what I was listening to. And the more I've delved into this, the more I believe that it is a national disgrace.
But is there any scientific evidence? Well, yes, there's screeds of research used by both sides to back up their positions. The latest is from the European Medicines Agency, which on Friday reported back the results of a major safety review, concluding that the 2 reported side effects it was investigating are not caused by Gardasil, that they would occur at the same rate without the vaccination. So the official position here is that the benefit outweighs any risks, which the parents of all of the girls we spoke to accepted. None had any qualms about signing the consent form. None are what you'd call anti-immunisation.
Both my kids were fully immunised all the way through.
You're not anti-vaccination?
Not at all.
Did you give much thought to whether or not Briar should get the Gardasil injection?
No.
Your children had all their vaccinations growing up?
Yes. Briar's had all her vaccinations on time.
So you're not anti-immunisation?
No.
I have actually had cervical cancer myself, and to this day I kick myself because no, I signed it, and if I'd known half of what I know now, I would never have gone near it.
But could it be worse than claimed side effects? Internationally, there are concerns Gardasil could be linked with deaths, and now that concern is being raised here too. Sarah Curran was a pretty typical teenager, 16 years old, elder sister to Danielle, daughter to high school sweethearts Jodie and Mike. How would you describe Sarah? What kind of girl was she?
Look, I think Sarah was kind of your normal 16-year-old teenager. She was well loved. She had lots of friends.
The Currans are an active family, and Sarah was physically healthy, very normal, as her parents describe her. Until one December morning 2 years ago when Sarah hadn't emerged from bed. This is the first time her parents have spoken publicly about her death. Tell me about that morning when Sarah didn't come out of her room.
She was just, no movement, no nothing. And so I went down and it was just like she was still asleep, but she was cold.
And really there's nothing that can prepare you for that. You don't see it or plan for it. It's something that will always remain in my memory anyway, was a phone call no one should get.
The Currans have to make new memories now without Sarah. Her sudden death as an apparently healthy 16-year-old girl was highly unusual, of course, so there was an autopsy. But no obvious cause of death was found. Toxicology was normal, no sign of drugs or alcohol. Histology was normal, no sign of disease. Heart and arteries all normal. So her family was advised to undergo tests themselves to see if there was any underlying genetic cardiac problem. Nothing was found. So what explanation do you have?
Well, it's down as a unknown natural causes, I guess, is what's written on the final report. But it's pretty unusual when what we call a normal 16-year-old girl does go to bed and doesn't wake up in the morning.
And so Sarah's death, as you would expect, was referred to the coroner. But the coroner decided not to hold an inquest, saying he's satisfied she died of natural causes. So what could cause a 16-year-old girl to die in her sleep? Well, here's something worth exploring, you'd think. Sarah had had a Gardasil injection that day.
What was the timing?
I think it was her second Gardasil injection, and I think it was 10 o'clock in the morning.
The medical reports after Sarah's death state the vaccine is well tolerated and that anaphylaxis, an acute allergic reaction which has been reported in about 3 cases per million, wasn't detected at post-mortem.
It's hard for me because she had that medical procedure that day that she died and did nothing else that was different. To just say that it was a coincidence is hard, but as Mike said, how do we find out for sure?
So what we can't say is that the injection that Sarah had caused her death purely because there isn't a testing available to prove that one way or another. But what we can say is we've had lots of other tests done and they've all come back as being perfectly normal.
What do you think? Do you think Gardasil did have a part to play in your daughter's death?
I don't know. I can't say whether I particularly feel that it did or it didn't, but it's certainly one thing that was different that day compared to any other day. Which leads you to wonder whether it's at least a possibility. Yes, it does. It's a pretty big thing to get wrong when you get it wrong, isn't it? I would hate to think that this didn't go unexplored and that somebody else would be in this position. It's devastating. As one doctor put it to us, when a normal, healthy girl dies the same day as having a medical procedure, any medical procedure, then it should go without saying that that procedure should be called into question. Without an inquest, there's been no investigation into whether there's any connection between Gardasil and Sarah Curran's death. It has been reported to the Centre for Adverse Reactions Monitoring, and in information we've obtained, it says that it carefully reviews any report of death with vaccines, and this one will undergo such consideration. So what's happened to Sarah's review?
My understanding is that the case has been considered and a decision's been made as to whether we were able to attribute vaccination to it or not, and we will have classified this case as being either in the negative, no, we don't believe it's associated, or B, it's unclassifiable, which means we cannot make a determination.
So you don't know which one of those two possibilities
I don't know, but
it
I'm
is?
sure we can get you the answer to that
We
question.
would appreciate that answer.
Yeah.
A week later, the ministry came back to us and admitted that in the 2 years since Sarah Curran died, that review has never happened. But it also says in the same response that it considers her death is unlikely to have been caused by the HPV vaccination. But how can that be the conclusion when the promised review never occurred? Which leaves her family in the dreadful position of not only dealing with their loss, but also having no explanation as to what caused it. You have a younger daughter. Will she get the Gardasil vaccination?
No. I can't take that chance. I don't know if it's something that was in Sarah's genetic makeup that maybe reacted to the Gardasil that Danielle has, or I can't do it.
There has been an inquest, though, into the death of another New Zealand girl whose family is convinced Gardasil is to blame.
Jasmine had her first cervical cancer vaccination, which was a Gardasil injection.
So what has it found? And what are our health authorities doing about these questions over whether this vaccine they're promoting is safe?
She passed away 6 months after the last vaccination was given.
Jasmine Renata's parents say she started to become unwell mentally and physically at the end of September 2008, and that coincided with the time she began receiving her Gardasil vaccinations. She had headaches and dizzy spells, nausea and occasional memory loss. She had feet, leg and back pain, as well as aching joints. She was tired all the time, and one night she complained of chest pains and said her heart was racing. 3 weeks later, she died in her sleep.
On the 22nd of September 2009, at about 5:30 p.m, police attended the death of Jasmine Nicole Renata.
As in Sarah's case, the cause of Jasmine's death was unascertained. But unlike in Sarah's case, there was an inquest, which we filmed, and at which Jasmine's family's concern that there was a connection to Gardasil was canvassed extensively.
At that time, Mark's causality assessment of this case was causality unknown.
MedSafe testified that it's not possible to ascertain whether or not Jasmine's death was related to the vaccination.
Mr. and Mrs. Renata, you've been an amazing couple of people that have been determined to try and find the reasons for your daughter's death. So look, my condolences to you as a family. My congratulations on the process and the effort that you have truly put into this. I wish more people were like that, and I wish you all the best for the future.
Sadly, Coroner Smith died in October last year before he was able to issue his findings. Another coroner is completing the inquest though, awaiting responses to his provisional finding, which is that the cause of death is unascertained. So where does this leave the families who think Gardasil is responsible for their daughters' illnesses and possibly their deaths? For those people who believe that Gardasil is the cause of the chronic pain that they're living with, what do you say to them?
That actually the issue is, what do you do next? How do you obtain
do they
treatment?
do next?
And it's you seek the medical care that's appropriate for your condition.
The experience of the families that we're dealing with is that when they do seek the medical care, there's no, if they get a diagnosis, and that usually takes a while, if they get a diagnosis, there's no cause for the diagnosis given. Maybe that's because there can't be a cause given. But what they are also universally finding is that the minute they mention Gardasil as just a possibility, they feel as though they're laughed out